Let's focus on Packers versus the Rams. We both had some good score predictions for this game. Ultimately, both of us were not correct.
But some more correct than others.
Although decently close with the spread, to be honest. You thought it was going to be a bit lower scoring. I thought it was going to be a bit higher scoring, kind of right in the middle there, 24-19 for the Packers. Let's talk first half. What did you see? I know you watched the game. We were kind of texting each other live. Tell us what you had in the first half. What did you like? What did you dislike?
There were a lot of, I don't know if it was good things. What was the second drive where they got the touchdown? It was, I can't say it was good, because the thing that upset me is, one thing I've noticed lately is just the hero ball that Jordan plays. And it kind of reminds me of old Favre era. It was forcing in the triple coverage. I remember when he threw the ball initially and it didn't pan over to see the coverage. I'm like, he's launching it, and then it pans to the coverage, and I immediately yelled out a terrible, profane word, which I will not repeat in case my mother watches this. But yeah, no, it was pretty rough to begin with. But then Jaden Reed came down with the ball, so I feel like with Love, that's just going to be the Love experience. You either live by the big play or you die by the big play, and he's not Aaron Rodgers. He's not pristine. He's not precise, but he is fun to watch. And that's something week to week that I really love. Like, there's something that I missed being a Packer fan for quite a while. And I feel like that gunslinger mentality is back in Green Bay.
I'm going to add on to your hero ball because I have that written down twice in the first half while watching the Packers play this week. The hero ball with Jordan Love is something that we've seen periodically throughout his career thus far. And when he launched that ball to Jaden Reed downfield, and I saw all those defenders, I immediately thought, oh no. And I thought in my head, Dane. I don't even know who Dane is. But
Another mess
Dave,
up.
I thought to myself, this is an interception. This is a terrible ball. Why did he throw this? And then by some miracle, Reed comes up with this pass. And I thought to myself after watching the replay, what an incredible pass. And we've seen it a lot of times where he forces the ball into places that he absolutely shouldn't have. We talked about it in the Vikings game in our synopsis there. Him tossing the ball up when he doesn't need to. I don't know what the offensive scheme is, if it's something similar to what we talked about last week where they're allowing him to just be free, take shots when he sees it. I wish that his shots that he was taking were a little bit more sensible and that they were a little bit coverage based. I know that when they asked Love about it after the game, he said that he didn't think that the safety was as deep as he was to be able to, try to work on deflecting this pass or getting to the ball in general. Regardless, I'm not an NFL quarterback. I'm not an expert at reading coverages. So I'm not going to sit here on my couch with a bag of potato chips and critique Jordan Love. The guy has an incredible arm. They said that he can't throw the deep ball. That's obviously not true. But there still seems to be a lot of focus on Jordan Love from this first half of football with the Packers and Rams. I thought that his performance was overall pretty good. I wish that we would have taken advantage a little bit more earlier. Just because the Rams were as poor as they are right now in the league, especially in the first quarter, they're giving up the most first quarter points in the entire league right now. So I wish that we would have done a little bit better job at taking advantage of early opportunities and making some play calls that were a little bit better. LaFleur said at halftime that we came out a little bit flat in the first half, and that was definitely the case. But some moments for sure in the first half that were encouraging.
Cal, do you mind if I interrupt you real quick, though?
Absolutely not. Go ahead.
So you know how you mentioned the fact of you were questioning what the heck are you doing when he threw that first ball? Why don't we bring up another time in the first half where we were like, what are you doing And that's the nice way of saying it. We're in church right now, Kyle. You have wood behind you, as most churches do. So we'll say it
Dave,
nicely.
are you referring to a certain interception that occurred
I
after?
might be I might be talking about that play, yes. Very Will Levis-esque. It didn't have complete mayonnaise in the coffee, but there did seem to be at least some type of sour cream in the coffee.
Well, let's talk about a couple things with that. One, that's obviously some kind of coverage mistake on the offensive line. He came in essentially free. I'm not sure which Rams player it was without looking back, but I mean, he came in essentially untouched to Jordan Love there, and he fails to make a good hit on Jordan Love because of these rules in the NFL now that prohibit guys from sacking the quarterback or taking him to the ground or hitting him forcefully, whatever the case is there. So I think he lets up on Jordan Love. Otherwise, like if this is the NFL of 10 years ago, Jordan Love gets absolutely rocked in the back of the end zone, and that's a safety.
He shot back. He's doing his own Lambeau leap. He's going up to the crowd.
Jordan Love is gone, and he's gone with a concussion if this is 10 years ago. So,
except for 10 years ago, we wouldn't have actually charged it as a concussion. It just would have been, hey, get up. You're in the next drive.
yeah, absolutely. So, I think that play is interesting for that fact. It's that Jordan Love probably was given more time to actually get rid of the football, just given the fact that I think the gentleman trying to hit him was a little bit afraid to finish that hit. Um, and it's a little bit different tackling methods, and all this stuff nowadays with how the rules are. But
Just what happens when you're afraid of love.
I'm I'm not upset at what Jordan was trying to do, if that makes sense. I think that he had the right idea. He was trying to launch that ball from a terrible position, out of bounds, or give his guy a shot, 10 yards down the field. It's just not a great pass, right? And it's a terrible situation for him to be in. It's panic football. He had to act, on a very, very short reaction time and try to figure out something to not take that safety. Ultimately, it ends up in 6 points for the Rams instead of 2, but we would have given him the ball right back. So the only good thing about that, Dave, is that we get, we end up getting the ball back out of this. And Jordan Love seems to almost always bounce back and be unaffected by making mistakes. We've seen that quite a bit with him too. Is that he consistently plays good football, even when he makes some mistakes like an interception from the end zone. We saw him drive down the field before half. We won't dwell on this too much, but even the announcers were saying it. Tony Romo was talking very briefly about it, but Narv Dog with the setup for the end of the half, and the kid drills it. I think it was in the 40-yard range for Narv Dog at the end of the first half.
Narv Dog.
Part of the reason that we can continue to, or that I say we continue to stalk him, but it's really you.
Narv, call me back. It's gonna have to be like this.
But Narv Dog absolutely comes through before half, puts it right down the middle. You love to see that. It was such a breath of fresh air for me to see that from him. Like I said, I won't dwell on that too much, but that's my first half of football. I didn't like that we weren't too aggressive coming out of the 2-minute warning in the first half. I thought that we were running the ball, which seemed kind of odd, given that it was more of a 2-minute situation. I would have liked to see them go down and try to put it in the end zone, especially after throwing a pick. But overall, I didn't think the Packers looked bad. I just thought they looked flat, and I agreed with Matt LaFleur. Also, we'll save that actually. So, all right, moving on. Second half of football, Dave. We are. Do you remember the score at the end of the first half?
Score at the end of the first half, wasn't it 10-13?
Okay. We're losing?
Yeah, we were losing.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So we have second half of football to play. We're down 3. Not within not within reach. I think that's how that's supposed to be said.
Within reach.
Yeah. So Packers get off to a hot start right away. We have a fumble recovery right away by who, Dave?
Fumble recovery, I believe, was by Mr. Xavier McKinney.
Indeed, it was. All right. So we have that. Then we have an incredible passing touchdown to Tucker Kraft, which is set up beautifully because the Packers were getting a lot of pressure in the first half. That's something that we didn't touch on that we probably should have. But the Packers were getting a lot of pressure put on Jordan Love in the first half. The example of that pick six is is exactly that. Getting pressure, getting up in his face, making him get rid of the ball a little bit sooner than he wanted to. So I think they were trying to focus really heavy in the half of how to alleviate some of that pressure. The screen game is obviously a very common thing that you see in the NFL for guys to start using when the pressure is really heavy, because it basically inhibits the defense from putting pressure on the quarterback, and they have to allocate somebody to cover guys out of the backfield, which is usually very difficult for linebackers and stuff to do, especially when you have guys in the backfield that can move or off the line that can move. Tucker Kraft on that touchdown was moving. Man was mic'd up for this game and was talking about his glutes hurt, Dave. They hurt him because he was running so quickly.
I actually didn't
So,
see that, but have you seen that Sports Metric rated him as the fastest tight end? Like play wise, play speed. He ended up running, I believe it was 19 something miles an hour, the fastest out of any tight end in the league, which is wild to me. Like me and you, like we'll get to draft season later on and we'll talk about that more. But I feel like we need to almost remember this and remember that 40s don't particularly matter as much as we think, because Tucker Kraft wasn't running like a 4.4 or a 4.3. Like he just came out and he just had that play speed, just went for it, and he is doing amazing. Like honestly, the blocking and the running behind it, it's something special right now. I feel like Tucker Kraft is really embodying like that folklore spirit that Green Bay Packers always leech at. Like I feel like the last player that I was this genuinely pumped for was John Kuhn. Like I feel like we almost start as fans, we need to start getting a Kraft mac and cheese chant or something like that. Just like Kraft. Or we'll work on it. That was bad.
so I heard this one today, and I can't claim it as my own. Uh, but they said, uh, I believe they said yak Kraft mac and cheese or Kraft yak and cheese. I believe they said
Kraft mac and cheese.
yak and cheese, Dave. That's what they said. Yak, obviously, being yards after catch.
And exactly what I want in my mac and cheese too. That's when I order at a restaurant. Throw some yak in there.
Yep. So I did like that one. That was a good one I heard today. So we have a very long touchdown pass to Tucker Kraft. We're feeling good about ourselves. Then we go to history, Dave. Not since 1970, Dave, has a
1970.
player.
How old were you in 1970?
I was negative years old.
I was negative 25.
I believe I was negative 23 at that time.
I believe my mother was 1 year old.
Yeah, my parents were alive, but barely. Not since 1970, Dave, has a player, the National Football League, started with 5 interceptions in 5 games. I'm setting my pen down. Xavier McKinney, we appreciate you. You're doing the Lord's work out there. It is really cool to see him fly into the ball.
It's amazing, man.
This is a topic that we can cover a little bit later here. Also, so again, we don't have to dive too deep into this right now, but I saw a quote from him this week that said, "When people throw the ball deep, like I take it as disrespect, Dave. He takes it as disrespect when people think that
Ooh, you disrespecting him?
they're disrespecting Xavier by trying to throw deep in the Packers secondary. I very much enjoy hearing things like that because it is a sign of things to come for the
Now,
Packers.
if I can, I will mention a certain rapper, Mr. X gonna give it to you. And I feel like that's really what Xavier is starting to, protrude to his nature while he's playing. He is the DMX of our backfield. He's a dog. I feel like every play beforehand, he's barking, he's going, and he makes the play. X gonna give it to you. X gonna give it to you.
There are some really, really good signs that we could take to this Houston game.
And we will. We're gonna be obnoxious.
X going to give it to you. It might be Kraft yak and cheese. It might be a lot of things that we might have to take with us just for entertainment purposes alone.
And for the
But,
3 people that maybe are watching this far into the podcast, stay tuned.
good on Xavier McKinney. He's doing the Lord's work, like I said. What an incredible start to the season. Who would have thought that it would have been this productive for him? Probably nobody.
Bro, it's so special.
Really cool to watch. Very happy for him and seeing him have success here right away. It's just a super cool thing. There's going to be a lot of McKinney jerseys showing up in Green Bay.
I might get one myself.
I have a Jair one. Might as well update the collection. Okay, moving on to the second half. We have McKinney's pick, and then we have also on a bounce back. We kind of talked about it earlier in the adversity of Jordan Love and kind of battling back from some mistakes. Love goes 7 for 7 passing to start the second half with 2 touchdowns. The first to Tucker Kraft and the second to
Mr. Tucker Kraft.
Tucker Kraft again. That's right.
Oh, my fantasy season was saved by Mr. Tucker Kraft.
Well, that was literally a touchdown of inches, so I'm glad it worked out for you. I thought it was very, very close with the naked eye. I did think he got in. I did think it was a touchdown. They reviewed it. Obviously, very, very close, but the ball was over the plane when they reviewed it. So we're looking good. And then, Dave, we get a little inconsistent in the passing game. And what I mean is not necessarily the play calling, but with catching the football. I think the guys, especially in this particular game, Dontavion Wicks, having some issues getting his hands on the football and pulling in these catches. A little bit frustrating because we've seen that a lot from him in his younger years here. I get it. He's only a second-year player. There's a lot of sky's the limit type stuff for him. People say that he is one of the best route runners in the league. I have not seen him run routes that consistently to attest to that. I'm sure you've watched much, much more tape and practice and all kinds of stuff, tape on him that I have not. I have heard nothing but positive things about him. But it seems as if this may be a long-lasting issue. It may not be for him. A lot of people compare the Devontae Adams thing when he was struggling catching passes very early in his Packers career, and look how he turned it around. I get all that. I'm not overly concerned with it because I feel like Jordan Love is a guy that's going to consistently, accurately throw you the football. So it's going to, like, the way I see it is the outcome is going to be exactly what it should be either way. If he continues to drop the ball, he's going to see a reduction in reps and targets. If he picks up his performance, then he gets a higher target share, especially with some of these injuries and stuff that they're dealing with, which is why he's getting targeted and put on the field a little bit more right now anyway, with the absence of Romeo Doubs, with the absence of Christian Watson. I think that it'll all play out as it's supposed to. I'm not in panic mode about this kid either. We talked about panic mode with the Narv dog, and look at how he showed out, right?
1 for 1.
That's right. So I'm not in panic mode about Wicks right now. I think that he'll continue to grow, continue to get better. He's a solid addition to the Packers team. He's open. He's throwing him the football. He's open. He's just got to hang on to some of these balls that
You,
are crucial balls.
you know what's
And
one thing that people forget too is a lot of people are comparing him to, oh well, Devontae in his second season, he had a lot of problems too. Devontae was also a second round pick. Wicks was a fifth round pick out of Virginia. It's the expectations he's already over exceeding. Like from where he was drafted consensus, because everybody always loves talking about consensus and how, oh, this is his value versus where he's drafted from. He's already exceeding that value just in the fact that he's getting open. He's got a case of the yips. He's not doing great catching the ball. A lot of them have hit his hands, and that's on him. And that's something he needs to do better for the team. But for a second year guy, showing that he can get open that clearly for a fifth round pick, it's still pretty impressive. He kind of reminds me of almost like a Stephon Diggs, really, where it's just that value, but people just expect so much more out of him in his rookie contract. Like we still have this man for another 2 years on top of this. Like, can you imagine where he's getting open right now? And he's dropping passes, but that development 2 years down the line from now, I'm nothing. If you're selling stock in Wix right now, I'm buying it. I will keep on buying it because the man's going to be at least a number two wide receiver in Green Bay. You know, you can predict what happens going forward and everything, but like I I see Wicks as the Packers' future. I see him and Reed really stepping up together. I see, we can talk more about like the other wide receivers later on, but I do see Wicks as somebody who is a cornerstone of the future of the Green Bay Packers. And just because he's making a few drops right now, it happens. We're still catching the W's. Like we still won that game. Granted, Minnesota we lost, but we did, our week out. I'm not. I don't want to talk about that. So let's just go forward, support our guy, and see where we're at.
yeah, speaking of which, the Minnesota game, I think that Jordan Love we talked about last week, him having some mobility issues, not looking like he was himself on the field. This week looked much better, a little bit more mobile, was scrambling a little bit. The commentators again were making some comments about him looking a little bit better on his feet, being able to scramble out of bounds, things of that nature. I thought the same. I thought that he looked pretty good, especially getting out of the pocket, just doing Jordan Love things. Is he going to rush for 70 yards a game? No, absolutely not. He's not a Lamar type. He's not a Jaden Daniels type. But is he able to do those kind of things when he needs to? Yes, absolutely. So it was good to see him a little bit more mobile. I was confident, at least this week, that he wasn't on the field injured or hobbling or just trying to gut through something. I think that he looked a lot better.
Well, what was it that 7 minute long drive in the fourth quarter where it was I believe it was 3rd and 12 and he scrambled for the first down. It's things like that where if he's really hurt, you're not getting that first down. You know, you're not able to get out of the pocket even, let alone scrambling down 12 more yards and getting that first down. So I think he's only going to play better.
Yeah, I agree. So we have no fourth quarter points for Green Bay, which is a little frustrating because I feel like good football teams tend to close games out, Dave, and they do that with good defensive play. And I'm not knocking the Packers or saying that they didn't play well at the end, good enough to win the football game. Any week in the NFL is subject to you losing. I was very worried when we put Matthew Stafford back on the field with limited amount, like with enough time to like not even have to rush down the field necessarily. Like I mean, they had to push the pace a little bit, but you have Matty Ice back there, not Matty Ice that lost 28-3 in the Super Bowl. Matty Stafford is back there, a very dangerous man to have in 2 minute scenarios. He's cold in those situations, man. He's very cold and cold in a good way, Dave. Cold is in like a twist ice cream cone from Dairy Queen. That kind of cold, you know?
That's pretty
So
cool, Kyle.
fairly cold.
It's
But
kind of
in the
like when you throw Italian spices, meats on top of a hoagie roll. Italian cold cut combo, Kyle. That was Matthew Stafford.
I very much enjoy Matthew Stafford going to work. I could have very much used Kyron Williams finishing that drive off with a touchdown. But he did earn me quite the amount of fantasy points this week, Dave, so I will not complain. But that is neither here nor there. It just would have been not a disastrous thing had the Packers lost us to a Kyron Williams bomb, and then uh, I would have had to stomach that. But it would have been in here. I would have complained about it and the lack of Packers defense. But would I have appreciated fantasy points? Yes, I would have. So
But my fantasy team.
I think Green Bay's lack of ability to score points in the fourth quarter of this game is kind of something that I look at as a red flag. I think that you have to put games away when you have the chance. And unfortunately, I think that we were up uh, 24-13 in the fourth quarter. The Rams, end up driving down the field. They score a touchdown. They don't get the 2-point conversion. Excellent tackle on the outside. Um, to prevent them from getting that 2-point conversion. And what people didn't talk about much with the end of this Packers game is that if they didn't show effort on that 2-point conversion, that's a field goal for the Rams at the end, and that's a tie game, and we're sending that to OT most likely. So big time defensive decisions there. Way to play the entire game on the Packers' behalf and fight through some adversity there at the end when it could have been really bad. Because I think that, like I said, without that stop on the 2-point conversion, that's a field goal at the end for the Rams. And I think they're a little bit more conservative in trying to get a last-second field goal. So good on them. And just to close out this game synopsis, because we've been on that already almost a half hour with some other stuff in there. Evan Williams closes it out. It was fun to see that in fourth down. I thought that he played a pretty good game overall. I was very, very impressed by him. He seemed to be flying around the field. Packers win 24-19, Dave. That's a W. Put it in the column.
You know, Kyle, one thing I can kind of disagree with you on is where you're saying good teams close it out. I feel like this season's been kind of weird, and also last season in a way. I don't think that there's a dominant team that's particularly, unless you're the Kansas City Chiefs, which the Green Bay Packers are not there yet. The Chiefs seem to be the only team that's really making those plays and really blowing everybody out to be able to do that. I feel like the NFL, it's hard to win, man. It's hard to win a game, and plus, especially in an opponent like the Rams, Matt LaFleur and Sean McVay are so similar. They know each other's styles. So like being able to keep on winning that chess match between McVay, I'm all for it, man. I feel so good about this win. I know you do too, but I feel like it wasn't something that you had to put away. I feel like you survived, you did good, and I know people will complain and say, "Oh, well, what if Cup was in there? What if what's the other Nuka? Nakua?"
Cool.
So what if Nakua was in there? What if Cup was in there? What if Jair was in there? The game changes as things go.
Well, there's certainly aspects to that win, from both sides that are comparable, right? Like you can say, like, well, like you said, like, well, if the receiving core for the Rams was different, then they, could have pulled it out, or maybe they had more of this or more of that. Yeah, maybe that's true. The Packers have faced some good wide receivers though to start the year. They faced AJ Brown, they faced Justin Jefferson. Like, I don't think that it changes necessarily the outcome of the game. I think the Rams are kind of in a slump right now, and they have to pull themselves out of that for whatever reason that is. I think more so a defensive problem than it is an offensive problem for them because they'll get going. Um, but certainly, there's things that you could say on both sides, are issues. Um,
But at the
are
end
they?
of the day, they came out with the win. And that's really what matters. The Packers are a resilient team. They could have, rolled up as soon as Love threw that pick six. They could have just gave up. They could have just not bounced back. Like you said earlier, this team bounces back. And that's the difference between last year, where there were a few games that were, quite frankly, embarrassing, that you could see Green Bay wasn't even fighting. they're fighting this year. They're still moving forward. I am so optimistic on this team, Kyle. It's actually pretty gross how often I think about the Packers.
Well, I see your optimism, and I will try to at least stay somewhat in that general vicinity of where you're at. I think the problem that I have is that I believe we're sixth or seventh in the league right now in total touchdowns allowed, and we're not doing too great in terms of yards allowed either. We've consistently for the last few years, even under Joe Barry, been good at defending the red zone and such. But we do give up, quite a bit of field position, and we give a lot of touchdowns up. If we're able to outscore every team, then it doesn't really matter as much, right? And we can start to worry, like, keep the defense off the field. That's my biggest worry in wins like this is can we keep the defense off the field long enough? And that's what I mean putting away the game, right? Like the offense has to take control. That's what Rodgers was very good at, especially in his younger years. And I'm not making comparisons to Love and Rodgers. I'm talking about the offensive scheme and the ability to be winners, right? The best teams do it. The Andy Reids and Patrick Mahomes are different in this league because they're able to produce plays in game time decisions, right? They're able to keep possession of the ball. They outpossessed, I think, the Saints last night by like 13 minutes. It's ridiculous. It's almost a full quarter of football that they're holding on to that football
Yeah.
even with the weapons that they have. So I think the Packers need to just do a little bit better at game control under certain circumstances. The game is 24-13, and it's not impossible to say in the NFL that somebody scores a touchdown. I completely get that. But then what we do on the other side of the ball can't be a 3-and-out, right? It has to be something better than just allowing the Rams to take that ball back and just go set it up for the win. I think that we got to do better than that, and that's kind of my point for not necessarily even frustration, just the concern around the end to that game for the Packers. Because I feel like if that's a better team and you have some different weapons in that game, I think that does change that for the Rams, and maybe it's a different outcome. But for this
Oh,
particular,
without a doubt. I don't think the Packers are there yet. I think they're a team that needs to keep on ascending. Because right now, say if you're in the playoffs, I don't see them making a run. This team right now that we have, I don't see making a run to the Super Bowl. But thank God for us, we're only in week 5, so we can keep on moving forward. And, you look at the Packers of last year, it was really the second half where they made their comeback. But you look at last year's first half team to this year's first half team, I see improvements. I'm very optimistic.
yeah, I'm there. I think that a lot of people, even the announcers that are calling these Packers games, have a lot of faith in the Green Bay Packers and what they've seen. I think it just needs to get to a point where everybody's confident in what they're doing. They know their assignments, and they're going to go out and execute it. That's all it is. Every week in the NFL, that's all you can do is just go out and execute, and hope the game plan is enough to get you the W. In this case, it was. Packers move on, and so will we, Dave.
That we will.
Into our next topic, which I'm going to give some props to. Well, actually, let's cover this first. We'll talk wide receiver issues in Green Bay. It's a hot topic. There's a lot of stuff going on around the league with Devontae Adams and wide receiver issues. We
Kyle,
had a big issue.
this is Green Bay, Wisconsin. We would never have such issues with a wide receiver. Who? No. Aaron's gone. Devontae's gone. However, would we have an issue with a wide receiver, Kyle? Who
So the new
possibly could be the issue right now? And how do I have a personal connection to this individual player, which makes it hurt so much more?
You and I both know Romeo Doubs suspended this week for conduct detrimental to the team. Dave,
It was so detrimental.
it seemed it seemed like it was a very political statement from the Green Bay administration on what happened. People said that it was for his role in the offense, that he walked out of practice. And that seemed to kind of stem some of the disciplinary actions we saw, which allowed or disallowed him from playing in the Rams game this week. He was not there. He was never shown on camera. that is a giant concern to me because that makes automatically any fan question, is there some kind of locker room issue in Green Bay that's going undiagnosed? Is this an independent issue? It brings up a lot of questions that we don't know, Dave, ultimately what's going on, without, even if somebody was to report on it tomorrow and say this is exactly what happened, unless it's a reputable source from the Green Bay Packers that we can trust. I don't believe that these guys are willing to always air out their players' business in the media. It's not professional to do so. They're not going to give us the full story. It's in-house business for the Green Bay Packers, and that's how this situation is going to continue to play out. Now, Doubs is suspended for like what I just quoted before. There's some speculation around that. I'm not going to even play into all that. So I'm just going to say what I have heard. It sounds like it is to some extent his role in the offense that he's concerned about. And there's some speculation that maybe because the target share has been heavy to Wicks, that he has a problem with that, and that those two necessarily don't jive with one another. I don't know if that's true or not. I have no grounds to say that does or doesn't exist. I'm not going to sit here and start the rumor mill about Doubs and Wicks not liking one another. I I don't think I need to feed into that at all. What I am concerned about is that what we have a coach in Matt LaFleur that plans very elaborate offensive schemes each week, and he's able to do that on a very short time frame. Like it's amazing to me what head coaches can scheme up in a week for a certain team, you know. Um, and not just head coaches, like obviously there's different schemes in the NFL. Some head coaches call the plays. In Matt LaFleur's case, he calls the plays for the offense, and defensive coordinators. Like I mean, we have Hapley sitting it in the box, doing his thing. He's not down on the field, but like guys prefer different things. Nothing wrong with that. I think the problem is that the trust in the system has to be there, and out of Romeo, you want to see a guy. Now here's a guy, Dave. We're gonna do the Collinsworth take right now. All right. Um, Romeo Doubs is a guy that you want to see heavily invested in the Green Bay system after being in it this long. We've seen some trust and love in him. We've seen some chemistry there. You just like to see Romeo in that system, comfortable with where he's at. We all have frustrating times with. I'm trying to say us like I'm part of the team. I think there's always parts of the season that are frustrating for certain players. The Minnesota game was a big game, and maybe how he was used in that game he didn't like. And I understand his frustration with that, but then you need to have a conversation with your head coach rather than walking out of a practice, right? You got to come up with some other ways to deal with adversity. I don't think this was the way. They suspended him, and I was really wondering when he took out all of his Green Bay stuff out of his social media and all this other stuff, if it was going to be another huge controversy where we're going to let a player walk away. And ultimately, I think that's exactly what they would have done, Dave. And I'm not trying to stick on this topic for crazy long because I want to give you an opportunity to talk about it. But uh, I think the conversation between, because they had a meeting today, the conversation between LaFleur and Doubs today, Dave, had to be something along the lines of, hey, you're a valuable player for this team. We want you here. We need you going forward. Um, where are we at? I think from the Green Bay side. And then from the Doubs side, I think this has to be a, hey, I didn't handle this very well. I'm sorry. I want to be here. Let's move forward. This is what I'm looking forward to getting done in the future so that we don't have this come up again. This was my issue, right? If that is the conversation, because it sounds like the talk went well, I'm happy with that. I think everybody picks up, they roll their rolling suitcase on the next plane, and they move along. And they go to their destination, and we forget this happened, unless it's and a thing that keeps coming up. What are your quick thoughts in this situation? We're kind of pressed for time here a little bit with some of our topics. So we dwell on the synopsis.
It's a shame because I really wanted to elaborate this one. I have a whole lot about this issue. First of all, Kyle, I I believe that you know this personally because I called you as soon as Mr. Romeo Doubs is drafted. I've been a fan of the NFL draft for probably since the 2009 NFL draft. It was the draft Stafford actually got picked. So that was when I started getting invested into the draft. I was 14. No, I was 2009. Numbers are hard. 14 years old. Yeah. So I was 14. I started really getting into the draft. And since then, I've only had a handful, maybe 3, 4 players who I have a draft crush on, who I really, really like to actually get drafted to Green Bay. Romeo Doubs was one of them. Romeo Doubs is one of my favorite receivers in the NFL. He's definitely my favorite receiver on the Packers. I think that he's a guy that is so underrated. He's a lunch pail guy. He just picks it up and he goes forward. He does what he needs to do. And I feel like he got upset. I don't know the specifics. It was like you said with Wicks. Maybe it's they don't mesh. I don't know. But let me ask you this, Kyle. We were coworkers for I believe 3 years, 4 years. Did we always agree?
No, Dave. I believe we had well, not argument, but I believe we had a discussion where I had an itemized list of problems one day in a laundry room.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we there were times where we would argue with each other. We would fight with each other. And not even the laundry room incident. I remember us profoundly cussing each other out in the hallway over a situation that happened where I might have accidentally tackled you into a wall. But that's neither here nor there.
Cussing, swearing, anything that doesn't belong in church, Dave, is something that doesn't even sound
No,
like me.
we're good Christian boys, so we don't do that. But there were times that we didn't agree, but we still maintain professionalism. And unlike you know Dobbs and Wicks, they might not come out as friends at the end, and that's okay. Me and you, very good friends. At least I'd like to think so. But I think that's the stance I need to take. If you have a problem with your coworker, he's your coworker. Be professional. It's not everybody's there. You're there for a check. You're there to help the team because that's your life. Boo hoo. Oh, Wix is getting more attention than me. So what? That's just the game plan. That happens week to week. There's going to be guys that get more targets than you. You're still getting targets. I'm very disappointed in the fact of Dobbs, if that is true. We don't know if it's true or not. That's just reporting. If he has a problem with Wicks, if he has a beef with Wicks, if he's getting petty about that, that's too much, man. But
I think the problem in the NFL is that too many guys nowadays want to be the guy. They
yeah,
want to be the number one, the highest paid player, the go to guy. And they don't give other guys enough credit. It's not as much of a team game in that aspect anymore, which is a shame because you had guys that built a legacy around what was around them instead of all about themselves. And they were very successful. Tom Brady is an exact example of all that. Didn't take the highest paying contracts, but allowed guys to come into New England that had talent and play good football, so the organization could plan around it and pick good players or select good players out of the draft or pay free agency guys to come in and make a huge difference.
look at
Um,
Donald Driver. Donald Driver was never the number one wide receiver in Green Bay, where it was hands down just drivers getting all the attention. You had a Javon Walker, you had Greg Jennings, you had a Jordy Nelson, you had generations where there were other guys that still got the ball.
yeah, yeah, I think that the guys got to stop saying it's all about me, and my target share. If you don't like your role in the offense, that I guess is a whole separate issue because it's not necessarily just about targets or are you catching touchdown passes. When it comes to crunch time, if that's your issue, then I think I think it's just two separate sets of problems. Is what I think.
You know
Um,
what it comes down to, Kyle? You know what really is the baseline?
what are you
Mr.
What are you going to say here?
Mr. Kanye West said it right when he said, nah, nah, wait till I get my money right. Nah, 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 then you can't tell me nothing. That's what it is, Kyle. We're in year 3
Dave,
of
I'm
Dobbs.
I'm searching on my clipboard here for uh, where it says Dave singing, and it's nowhere on this clipboard that I can find.
That's why the 3 people that watch this are watching it, Kyle. That's you never know what's going to happen. But that's the issue. Right now we're in year
Not
3.
on the Lambeau Lounge bingo card for tonight. It was not.
It's Dave singing Kanye West. Who would have guessed? But no, it's a money issue. It becomes he's in year 3 of 4. He wants to get as much target share. He wants to get his numbers up because ultimately, whether he's in Green Bay or not, once his contract is done, he wants to get paid. That
Well,
has
then
to be it.
you better put up numbers to get that money, right?
But
Like Jordan Love to get the money, right? Like, and I'm not in support of the Jordan Love contract. I love the man. He's playing good football. I think he's an incredibly talented individual. Young, who knows what he can do in his career if he stays healthy, right?
hmm,
But he put up the numbers, and like I think that's what you have to do in the NFL nowadays is you have to produce. And I don't think Dobbs is producing pay me Devontae Adams money. Like I don't think he's
no,
pay me Justin Jefferson money.
no.
Like I don't think they get Jamar Chase money even. Like if they're going to restructure that contract or whatever they're going to do with that, right? Or did
But
they restructure?
Christian Kirk money, maybe
Yeah. Um,
17
I'm
million
just
dollars
saying.
a year.
I'm just saying, man. Like, are you producing those kind of numbers? And if you're not, you have to close your mouth and like suck it up and put up. I just think that's how it is.
But that's my
But
point. Is that's why I think he's really that's the baseline of why he's upset. I think that he's going to speak out because he wants those target shares because he wants to produce those kind of numbers ultimately.
we'll see what happens. I want him to be successful in Green Bay. Obviously, I think as fans, you already mentioned your love for the man. I think that he has a long career in Green Bay. As long as he stays happy, hopefully they're able to figure out a good solution to whatever he had going on and move past it.
Romeo Doubs is one of the few people I want to see retire as a Packer. And I really, really stand by that. I know it's going to be egg on my face when he plays for the Vikings 2 years from now, but it's yeah. But we can move on. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep on ranting.
Yeah, so tying in with this whole Romeo Doubs issue, I think that it was important that he met with the coach because obviously that's a conversation that needs to be had is hey coach, I did this, right? These are my concerns. How do we move forward? Maybe there's an apology or something in there. Maybe LaFleur is not the kind of guy that cares about an apology. He just wants to kind of move on and figure out what his game plan is going to be for the upcoming week. I kind of see that as more LaFleur's demeanor, to be honest. I don't know if he's like a guy that's going to have his feelings hurt if you don't apologize to him. I think he just wants to know like how can the team move forward. He seems like a reasonable guy, really about the team aspect of football. LaFleur, to me, uh, has done some really incredible things since he's come into Green Bay. And I'm not really trying to get like over the top about it or like, seem like I'm kissing the guy's butt or anything like that. But like, we have a great head coach for this football team. The situations that this man has had to deal with and field in his time in Green Bay, I don't know if there's other people that could have come out of it as successful as Matt LaFleur has, to be honest. He was handed the reins in a time where Green Bay needed change, and they made that change, which we were all, I think, a little shocked by because Green Bay has a tendency to say, no, we're good with what we have in house and outlast things that are well past their time. And I think that Matt came in a Aaron Rodgers scheme when Aaron Rodgers was very stubborn and established in this franchise and had to say, hey, I'm going to change the way we do things and you have to get with it. And so, like, I thought there was going to be a lot of butting heads between Aaron Rodgers and Matt LaFleur. And if that was the case, it was kept completely under wraps. I think that they had their troubles and like working pains, growing pains, but you didn't ever see them go at each other's throats. And Matt has always been respectful about Aaron Rodgers, even though Aaron Rodgers, as everybody knows, cool to the media, cool guy outwardly, not always the best reputation for being a good locker room guy. So like Matt had to stomach all of that, right? And then Aaron leaves and he has the new guy, which is Jordan Love, and coming up with offensive schemes that support Jordan Love. How do I support the youngest NFL team now in the National Football League as of last year, right? I think the Rams actually and the Packers are the two youngest teams in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
And Stafford is the only one keeping the Rams from being the youngest. With his age is just off balancing the entire Rams roster probably.
Oh yeah.
By being an old man. But I hope he plays forever, man. I hope he plays long past when Tom Brady did. But
I want Aaron Rodgers to die on the field, and I mean that. There's a deep rooted. I want to be like a gladiator where I just see him go, and I want to see the ayahuasca DMT trip in his eyes while he's passing on to heaven, or the alternative.
Matt LaFleur has done an incredible job with this offense. He did an incredible job last year play calling. You can see it in games like the Malik Willis games this season, Dave. It's so abundantly clear to me that
Game planning's amazing.
This man comes into every week with a game plan that works. It's successful, and people do not. I don't think enough people give him enough credit in Green Bay, so I'm giving him credit here. Matt's tearing it up, man. This was a fun little segment for me to think about putting together because no one talks about the coach as much as he deserves it. To be honest, 2 wins with a backup quarterback who came in on short notice to get these weeks done, wins both games. Which it's the beginning of a season. These are kind of your like tone-setting games for the season, and you have your starting quarterback out. You win both games, and then even in the first half, we say, okay, hey, our guys came out flat versus the Rams. We're down in LA, right? Like the McCarthys of the world would have stuck with the exact same thing and not changed a thing. And we would have done things like go 3 and out 5 times in the second half. We would have thrown more interceptions. We'd have turned the ball over. We wouldn't have had the run game involved at all. And we'd have lost a miserable game. That's what would have happened in Green Bay had this been the old staffing. But not Matt LaFleur. He says, my quarterback's being pressured and threw a pick 6 in the back of the end zone. Yeah, not smart. We're flat, right? Comes out in the second half. Screen game, right? Changes it up, keeps it on the ground, gives his guys a shot to win the game. And ultimately they do it because the Packers, I think he believes, just like me and you do, that the Packers have the weapons to win these games, right? If he makes 0 adjustments and does nothing for this Packers offense, and I think they lose. And I think it's absolutely fair to say that Matt LaFleur is a huge piece of what this Packers offense is doing and how successful they are and have been over the last couple of years that he's been here. So I give him all the credit. We gave Xavier McKinney a round of applause. I'm giving Matt a round of applause too. He deserves one. Great job, Matt. We love the guy. I think he's a great example. His locker room talks always give me a little bit hyped up because he seems really passionate about this team. I also love that.
Kyle, let me point something out right now, and this is going to be a deep take. This is going to be a lot of people don't know this. There are 2 people, if I were to say names, only one of them has a job in the NFL right now. You have Matt LaFleur and you have Robert Saleh. So I know a lot of people don't know that. And I know what you're thinking. You're like, who was Robert Saleh? He was a defensive coordinator for the 49ers for many years, very, very successful. And then he went to a team called the New York Jets, where he became the head coach.
Dave, who is the quarterback for the New York Jets?
I believe that it's Mr. Aaron Charles Rodgers. And Mr. Charles just...
Is that actually a middle name?
It sounded right. Felt right.
What's that?
Sounded right. Felt right.
You just threw it out there. That's not based in facts at all.
Yeah, no, this podcast is nothing but misinformation, Kyle. I mean,
I just really thought that you knew his middle name. I don't know his middle name, so
yeah, no, it feels right for it to be Charles. I might have heard it before on the radio before. I don't know if it's
next week, everybody. I'm writing it down. Here's my pen. I'm writing it down right now. We will come to you with Aaron Rodgers' middle name
and see if it's Charles. If it's Charles, I'll actually be genuinely hyped.
It can't be. Tybuska. Anyways,
But so
continue.
Rogers is a hard guy. He was someone that always pushes for his way, and now in New York he has an owner. And I know yesterday that Aaron Charles Rogers had a meeting with Mr. Woody Johnson. Don't know Woody Johnson's middle name. I assume it's Harold. He's old. That just seems like a old person middle name. So Woody Harold Johnson, they had a meeting, and they ended up talking, and Woody Johnson claims that the firing of Robert Salah was not due to anything that Aaron Rodgers said. But that's gotta be there from the pushback a few weeks ago, and just the fact of everything that's led up in this season so far of disappointment. It it just feels so gross. It feels like Aaron Rodgers just has his fingers all over it, and he tried to do that in Green Bay. But you know who was able to overcome that? Matt LaFleur. Matt LaFleur was able to actually be a good partner, be a good coach. He was able to just push through. He found, what was it, Nathaniel Hackett? He found Nathaniel Hackett, a reject that just got fired from the Jaguars. Granted, the Jaguars went to the AFC Championship, but that's beside the fact. He was also a scapegoat for Blake Bortles, but he was somebody that LaFleur hired that was unpopular at the time, and Rodgers fell in love. Rodgers was able to just see what they had, and he went with it. He bought in. And yes, he had his separation issues at the end, but at the end of the day, LaFleur was able to balance everything with him so perfect. And he's able to balance everything with Jordan Love so perfect. And Romeo Doubs. He's a people person. I don't feel like I feel like LaFleur is genuinely somebody that you just like so much. It's kind of like a Tim Tebow type feel where you're just like, this guy can't be real how nice he is. And it's just that's Matt LaFleur. And I'm so happy we have him as coach. I want to see him just be the Packers head coach forever because he's just doing it right.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. For the sake of time, I won't add to that. But Matt, I have it on the sheet here. It says LaFleur is the man in Green Bay. I stand by it. You're doing a great job, man. We appreciate you.
You're not watching this, but we love you.
Yeah, you're never gonna watch this and see it, but we love you, man.
And Narc Dog, call me back.
Let's wrap let's wrap this up. Don't. It's a violation of the restraining order. We've already been over that. Dave, please stop harassing this man. He doesn't. He, he really
I
doesn't.
love him so much, Cal. I can't.
I want to talk about the Narv dog. That was one of our hot topics last week. We touched on it in the first half of the game. That was the field goal. I think we're going to bypass that just for the sake of time tonight. We're already over an
and
hour.
for the sake of my restraining order, yes.
Yes, for that, exactly. But we're impressed with that kid, too. You know what? We've given McKinney one. We've given LaFleur one, Dave. Give it up. The Narv dog coming through. We appreciate you. You're doing well.
Narv Dog, keep it up.
We
Keep it up.
We knew you could do it. There's our Narv dog segment for the night. Keep
I'm
doing
sending you 3 more packages this week. It's
we
all.
believe. All right. Let's wrap this up, Dave. Give me your prediction. Packers Cardinals in Green Bay. What are your thoughts on this game?
Packers Cardinals. I think that our defense, although we've been doing some right things, it's going to be a different challenge. It's going to be somebody who's a lot more mobile, coming off of a big win. I don't know. I'm always going to predict that the Packers win. Spoiler alert. If I'm doing a podcast, I will never predict that the Packers lose. But this one feels like it could be a loss. I'm not going to predict that it's a loss. I'm not. I'm not. But it just it feels like if there was ever going to be a game that they're going to lose, this could be it. Especially with Kyler Murray running out and our defense not being able to attain the pressure. It's which, by the way,
Well,
I
Dave,
Kyle. No, I
you're
need this
beating
real
around
quick.
the bush. Beating around the bush, Dave.
Kyle, I talked about the pressure. You know who got a sack last week? A Mr. Zadarius Smith. Bring my boy home.
Dave.
Bring my boy home.
You're alluding to
With
the
that being
score.
said, Kyle, I'm going to go Packers 28. I'm going to go Cardinals 27.
That is a heck of a prediction. I'm glad that you're giving the Packers the slight edge. I do appreciate your initiative and the drive to still put the Packers first. I am not going to do that, Dave. The Packers are number one in my heart, but will they be number one on the scoreboard? Packers versus Cardinals. My realist mentality says no, and I'm with you. I think it's challenging. We don't do the best with mobile quarterbacks. We'll see how Happily plans for this game. Maybe we have an absolute answer for this, and we're going to spy him or whatever the case is. If they want to spy Gary or something like that, I think that's a great idea. Let him be mobile. He can get to the outside, but then that takes him off the edge. I don't know. Whatever they're going to do, man, I think they got to come up with a solution for Kyler Murray. We haven't classically been very good with mobile quarterbacks in the past, but it's a young team, and there's a lot of speed. There's a lot of ability for turnovers. Still, we know that. Hopefully, McKinney's 6 for 6. I think this is a decent Packers loss, if I'm being honest. I think that Kyler has a lot of potential to do well here. It's a home game, so I think that boosts what the Packers would normally score. But I'm going to say ultimately that this is a 27-31 loss for the Green Bay Packers. I think it's going to be tight. I think it could be very close down to the wire. But I think if it was an away game, I would say 31-20 Cardinals. I think that if it's a Packers home game, there's some ability for the tides to turn, momentum to swing very easily for the Green Bay Packers. They love playing at home. This is a 31-27 loss for the Green Bay Packers. And we'll move along. All right. With that being said, those are our predictions. We didn't get to some other stuff like the defensive pressures and some of the stuff going on with Rashawn Gary. The good thing is I think you kind of touched on it a little bit last week with some of the inability to get pressures on the quarterback, how much the man is getting paid to the other guys in his class. It's something we can kind of carry over to next week. Hopefully, we see a little bit more pressure and stuff on the quarterback this week. But the problem with putting pressure on a Kyler Murray is that then that lets him get out of the pocket. He's a very mobile guy, so it might not be the best week to focus on more quarterback pressures. He's a very hard man.
Ultimately, though, I do believe that if, say, you add Jair back, say he comes back from injury, we have the backfield that can sustain. Not Eric Stokes as you're going against your number one, but I do feel like we do have a backfield that is competent of playing their role too, which is why we need some vitamin Z. Bring my boy home.
All right, Dave. Well, I appreciate you. Second week in a row. We were late on the Lambeau Lounge podcast.
Yes, Lambeau Lounge.
Lambeau Lounge. I follow this page on Instagram. It's called Lambeau Leapers. Really good page.
Yeah. No, eventually we will have a lounge if we get at least double
if
digits
podcast
following us.
Like I envision green and gold couches. Like, dude, we could really do it up, but
we can. Just we need people to actually watch this show.
Absolutely. And then I'll have something better than this little microphone that we're dealing with here. So, but this is a good first start. All right, Dave. Yeah, I really appreciate you being here, man. And anybody watching, we appreciate you guys. And we will do this again next week.
No, if you made it through all the way, definitely appreciate you. Kyle and me are going to be at a Packer game pretty soon here against the Texans. So we're going to have a lot of live coverage even from Lambeau coming up. So if you're a fan, stay tuned.
Live coverage from Lambeau, and one of the other things to look forward to is we're going to do our own Kyle and Dave cast, similar to a Manning cast, but it'll be a live analysis of a Packers game.
Except way more sloppy.
During the actual Packer game, which probably entails Dave drinking, so by the end it'll probably just be me doing analysis. But we'll definitely get there. Thank you guys, and we will see you all soon.
Thank you.